When the final buzzer sounded and the scoreboard glowing above the court cemented a humiliating 100-84 defeat, the silence in the arena was absolutely deafening. This wasn't just another tough loss in a grueling basketball season. This was a complete and total meltdown on national television. And it exposed every single crack in the foundation of a franchise that was supposed to be destined for greatness. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere was completely toxic. Insiders reported that the Indiana Fever president was absolutely livid, allegedly pacing the executive suites and exploding on anyone within earshot. The sheer embarrassment of giving up 100 points in a game that mattered so much was the final straw. For months, the front office had tried to maintain a calm public image, smiling for the cameras and preaching patience while their superstar rookie navigated the harsh realities of the professional league. But patience had officially run out. The defensive lapses were inexcusable. The offensive sets looked completely broken, and the lack of adjustments in the second half felt like a direct insult to the management who had spent millions building this roster. Witnesses claimed you could hear the yelling all the way down the corridor. A terrifying mix of frustration and desperation from executives who knew their own jobs were now on the line. The honeymoon phase was violently over, and the realization set in that heads were going to roll. But while the Fever was tearing them apart from the inside, the fallout was somehow dragging the opposing sideline directly into the crossfire. What happened next would completely flip the script on everyone involved. Stephanie White, the brilliant basketball mind leading the opposing squad, suddenly found herself under an intense and unforgiving microscope. You would think a commanding 16-point victory would be a moment of pure celebration, but the reality was far more complicated. Almost instantly, White came under severe fire from media critics, rival fan bases, and even whispers within her own organization. Rumors had been swirling for weeks that White was deeply unhappy with her current situation, dealing with internal friction regarding roster construction and a severe lack of long-term financial commitment from her own front office. As she stood on the sidelines watching the Fever implode, speculation ran wild that she was already envisioning herself in their locker room. People began dissecting her every move during the game. Why didn't she celebrate when her team went on a massive 20-point run? Why did she look so conflicted during the post-game handshake? The accusations surfaced almost immediately that back-channel conversations had already taken place. Critics argued it was a complete conflict of interest, suggesting that White's intense focus was fractured by the looming reality of free agency and the massive, undeniable lure of returning to Indiana, a place where she had deep historical roots. The incredible irony was that while she had just orchestrated a masterclass in exploiting the Fever's weaknesses, she was simultaneously auditioning to be their savior. The tension was thicker than anyone realized, and her own fan base was beginning to turn on her, sensing that her loyalty had already left the building. But the truth behind the tension went much deeper than a simple coaching rivalry. To truly understand why a 100-84 blowout caused an absolute earthquake in the front office, you have to look at the unprecedented suffocating pressure surrounding the Indiana franchise this year. They didn't just draft a really good player. They drafted an economic phenomenon. Caitlin Clark brought sold-out arenas, record-breaking television ratings, and a microscope so intense it could burn a hole through concrete. With that kind of spotlight comes a ruthless, unforgiving demand for immediate perfection. When a team with that much hype gets absolutely blown off the floor, giving up easy transition layups and looking completely lost on defensive rotations, it isn't just a bad night. It's a brand-damaging disaster. The executives knew that millions of casual fans were tuning in, expecting to see a spectacular show only to witness a disjointed, embarrassing collapse. The financial stakes were simply too high to tolerate mediocrity. Every time the team looked disorganized, sponsors noticed, network executives noticed, and the league office noticed. The former president's explosion wasn't just about a single loss to a rival. It was about the horrifying realization that the current leadership was completely unequipped to handle the brightest spotlight in the history of women's basketball. The coaching staff looked like deer in the headlights, completely paralyzed. While the opposing team executed a flawless, ruthless game plan, the meltdown proved that relying purely on raw talent wasn't going to cut it. And a drastic, immediate culture shift was the only option left, and the cracks were already showing where it mattered most. Down in the locker room, the situation was rapidly deteriorating into a totally fractured environment. During the worst stretches of the 100-84 collapse, the body language on the bench told a story more brutal than the scoreboard. Veteran players were seen rolling their eyes, visibly exhausted by the lack of clear direction from the coaching staff. Huddles during timeouts were described as chaotic and quiet, lacking any sense of the fiery motivation needed to spark a comeback. When you are getting hammered by 16 points and the opposing team is hitting open three-pointer after open three-pointer, a team needs a leader to step up and stop the bleeding. Instead, witnesses claimed there was a disturbing disconnect between the players and the staff. Frustrations boiled over regarding playing time, defensive assignments, and the offensive hierarchy. Leaked reports suggested that some players felt entirely abandoned by the game plan, left out to dry against a highly organized opponent that knew exactly how to exploit their weaknesses. It was a humiliating experience, and when professional athletes feel humiliated, they stop listening. The post-game locker room was reportedly dead silent, a cold, heavy atmosphere where nobody wanted to make eye contact. It wasn't the silence of a team reflecting on a tough loss. It was the chilling silence of a team that had completely lost faith in the people leading them. They knew changes were coming, and frankly, some of them were practically begging for it. But the impending changes would be more ruthless than anyone anticipated. The front office was not about to let a disaster of this magnitude slide without severe consequences. Almost immediately following the game, the gears began turning on a massive structural shakeup. The fever brought in seasoned, ruthless executives who had absolutely no emotional attachment to the current coaching staff. When Kelly Krakoff returned to the fold, the writing was on the wall. She was a no-nonsense architect of championship teams, and she was thoroughly disgusted by what she had witnessed during the meltdown. The evaluations were swift and brutal. The existing head coach, who had tried desperately to hold the ship together, was suddenly fighting a losing battle against a front office that demanded nothing short of excellence. It was a harsh reality of professional sports. You can be a good person. You can work hard, but if you allow your team to look utterly disorganized on a national stage, you'll be replaced. The decision to completely gut the coaching staff wasn't made lightly, but it was made quickly. They needed someone who commanded immediate respect, someone who understood the intricate, high-stakes game of modern basketball, and someone who wouldn't flinch when the pressure reached a boiling point. The problem was, finding a coach of that caliber is nearly impossible in the middle of a chaotic league year. That is, unless you are willing to step on some toes and aggressively pursue a candidate who is already employed, which brings us right back to the eye of the storm. While Indiana were dealing with their explosive internal crisis, Connecticut were fighting a terrifying battle of their own. Stephanie White might have looked like a genius on the court, but off the court, her situation was rapidly falling apart. The Sun had long been plagued by rumors of financial instability and a glaring lack of investment in their practice facilities and player resources. White had allegedly been pushing management for necessary upgrades, demanding the tools required to build a lasting dynasty, but she was repeatedly met with closed doors and tight budgets. Her contract situation was completely unresolved, leaving her in a vulnerable and deeply frustrating limbo. When you are one of the most respected minds in the game and your front office refuses to commit to your vision, resentment naturally builds. Fans in Connecticut started to notice a shift in her demeanor. She was professional, yes, but the burning, undeniable passion seemed to be fading, replaced by a weary frustration. When the Indiana rumors erupted, it was the perfect storm. The fans turned their anxiety into anger, accusing White of having one foot out the door. The Connecticut management felt entirely blindsided, furious that their highly successful coach was allegedly entertaining offers from a direct rival. The 84 game wasn't just a victory for White. It was a glaring public exhibition of her immense value, a giant billboarding to the entire league that she was the missing puzzle piece Indiana desperately needed. And the fallout from that single night was completely unprecedented. In the days following the meltdown, the drama reached absolute fever pitch. Whispers of secret hallway conversations and late-night phone calls dominated the media cycle. Accusations surfaced that tampering rules were being violently ignored. As the desperation of the Fever clashed with the paranoia of the Sunday, reporters tried to corner White at press conferences, throwing relentless questions at her about her future, her loyalty, and her thoughts on the Indiana coaching vacancy. She expertly deflected, offering standard PR answers, but the tension in the room was suffocating. Every slight pause, every choice of word was hyper-analyzed by thousands of fans online. Meanwhile, the Fever president was allegedly working the phones relentlessly, using every connection and every ounce of leverage to ensure that when the dust settled, they would have their top target. The league office was forced to watch closely, quietly monitoring the situation to ensure that nothing strictly illegal was happening behind closed doors. Though everyone in the business knows that back-channel communication is simply how the game is played, the entire WNBA ecosystem was paralyzed by the standoff. Free agents stalled their decisions. Rival coaches looked over their shoulders, and analysts spent hours breaking down the massive ripple effects of a potential coaching blockbuster. It was pure, unadulterated sports drama fueled by a single catastrophic game that exposed the deepest vulnerabilities of two completely different franchises. Because, in the end, everything comes back to survival. The 100-84 meltdown will go down in history not just as a bad game, but as the explosive catalyst that reshaped the entire landscape of professional basketball. It proved that in the modern era where hype, money, and media converge at terrifying speeds, there is absolutely zero margin for error. The Indiana Fever realized that having a generational superstar means nothing if you don't have the brilliant, unflinching leadership required to guide them through the fire. The president's furious explosion behind closed doors was ultimately justified. It was the painful but necessary reaction that sparked a complete organizational rebirth. And for Stephanie White, it was the ultimate turning point. Caught under fire from a fan base that felt abandoned and a front office that felt betrayed, she had to make the hardest decision of her career. The chaos, the rumors, and the overwhelming scrutiny eventually forced everyone's hand, leading to one of the most shocking and dramatic coaching transitions the sport has ever witnessed. It serves as a brutal reminder that in professional sports, loyalty is a luxury, patience is a myth, and one single devastating night can trigger a chain reaction that alters the course of history forever. What do you think about the ruthless nature of front office executives in these high-pressure situations? Does a coach deserve to face that much backlash for seeking a better opportunity, or is it just the harsh reality of the business? Drop your thoughts below and keep questioning everything you see on the court. When the final buzzer sounded and the scoreboard glowing above the court cemented a humiliating 100-84 defeat, the silence in the arena was absolutely deafening. This wasn't just another tough loss in a grueling basketball season. This was a complete and total meltdown on national television. And it exposed every single crack in the foundation of a franchise that was supposed to be destined for greatness. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere was completely toxic. Insiders reported that the Indiana Fever president was absolutely livid, allegedly pacing the executive suites and exploding on anyone within earshot. The sheer embarrassment of giving up 100 points in a game that mattered so much was the final straw. For months, the front office had tried to maintain a calm public image, smiling for the cameras and preaching patience, while their superstar rookie navigated the harsh realities of the professional league. But patience had officially run out. The defensive lapses were inexcusable. The offensive sets looked completely broken, and the lack of adjustments in the second half felt like a direct insult to the management who had spent millions building this roster. Witnesses claimed you could hear the yelling all the way down the corridor.